Hey guys, this is Nunzio Signori from RPP Baseball. Like to welcome you to this Zoom call on recruiting, something that a lot of our youth athletes and parents alike are very interested in and concerned with, and rightfully so. We have a lot of things going on in the world right now of baseball and high school and college ball that creates it to be a bit of a moving target, and we here at RPP are really fortunate to have Sam Scharf on our team because Sam has been doing it for years and years on multiple platforms. And we just thought over the last year and a half, I believe, almost a year, going on a year and a half now, Sam has really, you know, he's added so much to our recruiting program. He's going to talk a little bit about the recruiting process. He's going to talk about his way of looking at it, and he's here to answer any questions. He's going to open it up to a round of Q&A at the end. I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I'm going to sit in on this and listen and learn. And take it away, Sam. I'd like to welcome RPP Recruiting, Sam Scharf.
Awesome. I appreciate the intro, Nuns, and thanks for everybody who's able to join us this evening. I'm going to take about 35 minutes here roughly to go through a slide deck and cover the landscape of college baseball, which we've seen, a lot of change over the last 3 to 4 year period. Talk a little bit about how we approach building a sound recruiting strategy, and then how to implement some tools and resources for yourselves as could help benefit you in your own processes. So we'll cover all that. Please, if you have some questions about a particular part of something that we're talking about, make a quick note, and then we would love to address it at the end, and we'll certainly kind of open it up to a wide-ranging conversation at that point. So just to give you a little bit of background on myself, as Nuj mentioned, we started RPP Recruiting about a year ago at this point. I've known the guys, both Nunzio and Baram at RPP, for over a decade, and it was really exciting to join the team. In my career to this point, I've had a lot of different experiences in the amateur baseball space, travel ball teams, running showcases and camps, ran a facility for a few years prior to COVID. So I have a good feel for kind of all the different components and how they interact within the recruiting landscape. I've dealt with players and families over a 15-year period. So definitely bringing a wide ranging of experience and knowledge to this piece of it. So I think it's really important to start the conversation and get a sense of what you are looking at for anybody interested in playing in the college game. As I mentioned just previously, within this 3 to 4 year period, we've seen drastic changes across the NCAA, but in our sport of baseball, probably the biggest component has been the roster structure, right? So the NCAA recently made a change from Division I roster standpoint, where it was a 40-person cap down to 34 players, so a reduction of 6 roster spots. This comes out of the House case, right, in the settlement. If you follow anything at the NCAA level, any of the sports, you see a lot of legal proceedings and a lot of different challenges within the court system. This came out of a broad case that like I said, went through a House settlement, and as part of that, it affected a lot of sports. But within the baseball capacity, the biggest change coming, rosters going from 40 to 34. And that really has a compounding effect across the sport. You're seeing, a cascade of talent down through the Division I ranks, Division II, and Division III. I think as a whole, right, if there's one kind of takeaway from this scenario, the floor of playing college baseball has risen significantly over the last handful of years, right? So as a result of that, you really have to best position yourself, and from a development standpoint, really challenge yourself to enhance your skill set to its fullest potential. This is not a scare tactic, but I think simply put, this is the most difficult environment as a high school recruit as there's ever been in the college baseball landscape. And a lot of it stemming from there. Part of that also, that settlement took the scholarship situation, which for many years was 11.7. scholarships for a fully funded Division I roster. They have taken that cap out, and you are now allowed to have 34 scholarships. So basically, one scholarship per roster spot. Very similar. Head counter is the term that the NCAA uses, and very similar to what football and basketball have employed for many years. When you look at it through that lens, I think it's important to note that the vast majority of Division I schools are not at 34 scholarships. So there are very few that are operating with that kind of resources. So the expectation, as you know, most guys being recruited at the Division I level, you're still going to obtain some kind of partial scholarship of athletic aid, potentially combined with or stacked with academic merit or financial aid, depending on what the institution permits. All right, across D2, you also have a chance to get athletic aid. The Division II setup ranges a little bit, particularly if you look at some programs that utilize a JV roster. So they'll have 70 players within the program, and then have a varsity and JV program, similar to what you might have at your high school currently. And then Division III operates without a roster cap as well. The institution might have a number that it wants to allow for the baseball coach to have, or the baseball coach simply might want to have a certain player to coach ratio that he thinks can be successful for his program. There's no athletic aid at the Division III level, so all of your financial reward is either coming through academic merit or financial aid. You can still do very well for yourself inside of that landscape, though. Over the years, I've had many players receive strong financial packages, excess, of six figures over a 4-year period at the Division III level. All right. While we talked about the roster structure, right, and going from 40 to 34, and that being such a big effect, perhaps, equal change that has had such a substantial impact on high school recruiting is the transfer portal, which really started to come about in the post-COVID world. What really changed the dynamics of that situation is you no longer have to sit out a year of eligibility when you move from school to school. So back in the quote unquote old days, right, if you go back to 2019, if you went from let's just pick two schools here, St. John's, right, and you transferred to Stetson in Florida, you, without a waiver, which was very difficult to obtain, you had to sit out 365 days in residence. So you could be on the roster, you could practice, you could be around the team, but you couldn't play in any competition for that year. Post-COVID, they got rid of that and went to a one-time waiver where you could transfer freely once. And since then, again, due to legislation and court rulings, that's even been taken away, and you can transfer year to year. Right? You see it now more and more popular, where guys will be on 3 or 4 different campuses over the course of their college career. That movement, that kind of free agency per se, has really impacted high school players, because ultimately, guys who have been on a college campus have had success. They're more attractive to a college coach. Number one, they're more mature physically, mentally. They've been through the rigors of a college baseball season. They should be ready to be plug and play on that new campus. And then just evaluating them is a lot easier. As somebody who's worked alongside transfer portal players, you get their stats, you get video versus a very structured playing environment, right? What they've competed against. You're going to have a pretty good idea of the talent that you're recruiting, versus trying to do some projecting along with the high school players. So as a result of this, that transfer portal dynamic has definitely taken high school classes and made them much smaller across the country. And I think it's an important time to note that every school in America is recruiting high school players, right? The SEC, the ACC, they're recruiting high school players, just less of them, all right? And then how that trickles down throughout the course of the sport. Another big change that took place a couple of years ago now is the August 1st of your junior year timeline, which is the first period where Division I schools can have contact with a prospect. So again, you go back, a few years ago, you used to see guys freshman year, even some 8th graders committing to, some of the blue bloods of the sport. That is no longer a viable option. So the recruiting process really starts in terms of communication and verbal offers during the August period heading into your junior year. All right. Now, I think it's important to note that if you're a guy who's on that timeline, really the May through August period leading up to that contact period really is the beginnings of your evaluation process. So if you're currently a 2028 that you believe is on an early trajectory within the process, you need to start thinking about your strategy into the summer evaluation period. So this is a little bit of how we look at the recruiting process through the lens of advising players over a decade plus now. Everybody wants to talk about the commitments. That's what we see on social media. We see the end result, but you really have to understand the layers that ultimately culminate in those opportunities. I think it's really important that you take a very holistic approach to your strategy and how your skill development, how your sports performance, how your academics ultimately all add up into your prospect profile, and then creating really the schools that are a potential fit, and then building out your exposure strategies from there. At the heart of any good recruiting process is player evaluation. If you take nothing else out of the call this evening, I urge you to find somebody, whether it's your travel ball coach, your high school coach, somebody in your circle. We can certainly be an entity for this as well, but make sure you have somebody who's willing to be a truth teller, be very transparent with you in terms of where your game is, where it projects into the college game, how you can influence your skill set to grow your opportunity within the recruiting process. All right, that information is so important to really ultimately maximizing opportunity. In terms of how you need to think about this, it's very individualized, right? Ultimately, what worked for your teammate or another family member, or somebody that you've observed in your community, might not be the right strategy for you, right? Your tools, your skill set, how you produce in game, your position, all drastically impact how you go about building out a winning strategy for yourself as a prospect. Certainly, I think it's really important as a high school player, right, that you start to live the lifestyle. And what I mean by that is college baseball at any level is a full-time job. It's demanding, it's long hours, the expectations are very difficult, right, as you transition to the college level. And the guys who start to build better habits in terms of their skill development, time in the weight room, nutrition, sleep, and prioritizing all these things, number one, they're going to, again, be able to influence their recruiting process to the best of their ability. But then two, create a system for themselves to help them with the eventual transition to the college level. And then in terms of the calendar, which I talked a little bit about in terms of August 1st being that first period, right, for Division I schools, August 1st of your junior year to be the first time for Division I schools to contact you, make verbal offers. Understand that that's really the first window, right? There's a lot of Division I schools, certainly Division II and Division III, which are recruiting more guys in the summer between the junior and senior year of high school. All right, and that window still takes care of the bulk of recruiting for most players. So understand where you are right now. Again, really lean on the evaluation and come up with a recruiting calendar and timeline that works for you. When you break down the recruiting process, all right, across all players, there's really four key components. The first part is to be identified, right? That might happen at a camp, a showcase, right? It might happen across social media. For example, right now you have across all the different states, right? Prep Baseball Report, PBR, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. They're going through their, winter events. It might be, a tweet that one of the state directors pulls out and a college coach sees it. It might be you proactively sending, a video to a school. It might be your travel ball coach or an advisor if you're working like with somebody like myself to help get you identified by that school. From there, the evaluation has to take place, right? And that's probably over a multitude of different opportunities. So it might be at a camp, followed up by a game evaluation in the summer, and so on. But you have to get evaluated. It has to happen in person, right? You know, for those of you who might be more familiar with like the football process, a lot of that happens on tape. While tape is important, data certainly plays a role, again, to help get you identified. The evaluation is going to take place in person, most likely in a game or a camp setting. From there, once a coaching staff has, verified your skill set and believes that it can be a part of their program, they're going to start to recruit you on a more serious level. So the contact might pick up, that's text messages, phone calls. Eventually, as things progress, they're going to get you to campus for a visit. You get a chance to see everything from both an academic and athletic standpoint, sit down with the staff, learn a little bit more about how they see you fitting into the program. And you as a family and a player really starting to learn what this exact opportunity entails. Certainly at that point, hopefully you're now in a position to get an offer, right? And that might be, with athletic aid at the Division I level. It might be a preferred walk-on opportunity. All those things should be spelled out for you. And then really at that point, you now need to really determine how that fits into your future, right? And that's where I'm going to jump to here. Ultimately, the goal for you as a player is to find a fit. We deem that as a place where athletically there's a pathway to playing time, right? You want to play in the uniform, not just wear it. That as part of that program, you have a chance to develop to your fullest potential as an athlete, reach your ceiling, and then that the coaching staff has invested in you. Yes, there's obviously that financial part, but when we talk about coaching staff investment, that there's been a relationship built out throughout the recruiting process, and that all parties believe that this is a great opportunity for one another. From an academic perspective, you have the 40-year vision, right? Ultimately, this is about a college degree, right? And a pathway to your career of choice. So you got to make sure that from an institutional standpoint, your degree is going to be an asset in that direction. And then it's going to fit you from a cultural standpoint, right? So you're a good fit with the coaching staff dynamics. You fit into the clubhouse, the type of players that they have, as well as style of play, right? Like if you're a guy who's built on speed and contact, but the design of the offensive approach is to hit for power, that's not a great alignment at the end of the day for you. So these are all things that you should be considering in fit, right? There's obviously then the financial part. And I think that's a really important piece, particularly from a parental perspective. Again, keeping in mind that the opportunity to receive a full scholarship is very limited in our sport, even in today's situation where there are technically 34 scholarships. Again, very small amount of Division I programs have those financial resources. So with that in mind, you really need to think about the starting point of the institution. For example, if you're looking at a school like George Washington in Washington, D.C., it's a school that starts with a price tag in about the mid 80s, all right, for total cost. If you consider a 50% scholarship a really good opportunity as a college freshman, you're still in the mid 40 threshold in terms of cost per year. If that's not going to be a tenable situation for you, it's probably not a good target. So it's really important that you begin your search process with the finances in mind. Then we obviously could look at geography and social. I kind of put those in the second category. As you can probably tell as we work through the presentation this evening, the recruiting process is really difficult. You got to keep the main things the main thing, right? And that being an academic and athletic fit, right? That's going to provide the best opportunity for your career, both from a long-term future and then on the field in those 4 years. And then you really have to think about this. This is a line from one of my good coaching friends. He told me one time, you have to think about it where you fit as opposed to where you want to fit. Want is nice, right? Everybody would love to go play at some of the blue bloods, some of the biggest programs in the sport. But again, understanding the landscape, understanding your skill set, and identifying fit, those really have to be the priority for every recruit. For guys who, have started to begin the recruiting process, right? The evaluation points them in a direction that, they need to begin marketing themselves to schools. I'm going to take you through some things that we would encourage you to do, whether that's in the immediacy or down the line for some of you younger players who might be joining us on the call this evening. So when we look at a proactive strategy, it really entails two main components, right? And that's video and then email contact. You can also kind of build that into a little bit of Twitter or X DMs if you want to go down that path. That's a little bit of a new resource for players if they want to pursue it. But I always tell guys, email's always safe. But any good email campaign starts with video. And understanding how to build a recruiting video and game tape are really important strategies to marketing yourself. And I'm going to show you some really good examples of those here in a minute. The next part is once you've identified schools and programs that maybe have some interest or you believe are a good fit, you need to ensure that your playing schedule, particularly in the summer and fall months, is going to provide exposure to those programs. I can't tell you how many times I've come across players that their fit is maybe a really good Northeast Division III baseball program. And that's a great opportunity. We have tremendous programs at that level in our region, but they're spending 50 to 60% of their summer playing out of the region. They're losing opportunity for exposure to good fit programs. And in today's climate, that's more detrimental than ever, right? That was never a good strategy, but in today's world where, again, the Division I roster scenario has really spread out talent, there's simply less chairs at the table for high school recruits. So if you're out of the region and you're letting other recruits get exposure to the schools that are good fits for you, you simply might miss out on opportunities that you should have been more targeted with throughout the course of an evaluation period in the summer months. All right. And then simply put, you're obviously going to spend time building out this strategy, but you have to react and adapt within the process, right? Nobody likes to hear a no, but those no's are important. They lead you on a pathway to hopefully getting that yes. Don't be stubborn, right? If you're not getting responses, if you're not getting significant interest from the schools you're targeting, you need to start to look at other opportunities within the college baseball landscape. As I said, I can't stress enough, having good video can be a real asset within the recruiting process. The next part to that is everything that I'll talk about here in this capacity can really be done by the player and family. Every recruiting video I've ever done has been done on an iPhone. Not a lot of fancy technology. All right. So just keep that in mind. It's about the player, not the video, right? The guys that have these well-produced music, intro screens, like none of that stuff matters. I can tell you from just our, data and stats that we look at, our videos, which we use YouTube as a way to send out to college coaches, on average get viewed about 8 seconds. All right, so you have very little time to catch their attention. A 5-minute recruiting video is not going to get watched. So I'm going to pull up some examples and just talk through it here real quick with you guys. So this is a hitting video. This is something that we produce for players. It does have some TrackMan built into it. You don't have to look at that necessarily. Just keep perspective on the timing and the angles that we're using. So we use simply this front view of the hitter, head to toe, and roughly about 6 feet out in front of home plate. With this perspective, we can see size and strength of the player. We can see their bat speed. We can see their bat path. We can see a little bit of ball trajectory as well. And it's a very simple, clean, this is a 21-second video, and we've got a really good sense of what that player is all about. To the pitching side, just going to fast forward through here real quick a little bit. So this is an angle right behind the mound, clear perspective of the strike zone. We can see both their ability to command the baseball here and then some pitch shape all right, as well as a little bit of arm action. And then we usually end the video with 2 to 3 clips from the open side. So head to toe of the pitcher, all the way to the front of the mound. Again, very quick, good perspective on how the player is able to command pitches, their arsenal, right? So being able to look at different pitch types. And then that open side is going to give us a chance to look at the arm speed and the mechanics. Very simple production, very quick look for a coach to make a, decision about, hey, this is interesting. Let me reply to the email. Let me dive more into it. From a game tape perspective, right, within the next few months here, at least the Northeast, hopefully the snow is going to continue to melt. We're going to be on the field here pretty soon. We now can start to implement game tape. All right, but game tape is only as good as the angles. All right, it's really important that you give these coaches something to watch that can be, again, helpful for them to evaluate you very quickly and decide in that identification phase that I talked about earlier, whether they want to spend time evaluating you and recruiting you in the process ahead. So from a hitting standpoint, again, this is the best angle here. It's just open side. We get to see the entirety of the hitter and about 10 feet out in front of the plate. Notice that we don't follow the player. We want to see the entirety of the swing. We're able to get them a little bit of athletic movement out of the box, but this is a very clean look for a coach to see, again, the key components of what he wants to see on video. To the pitching side, behind home plate, very tight picture. Again, we can see head to toe of the pitcher. From this perspective here, opposite box of the hitter. All right, the umpire's not blocking our view. And similar to what I talked about earlier, we're seeing pitch, command, in terms of how he's able to work to different parts of the plate, and then pitch shape. These things, again, are really important in order to be able to use video as an asset to you. Again, for us, we use YouTube as a way to store all video and send it. We're getting able to look at views, how long each video is being looked at by a college coach. In addition to, it's a very organized way for us to structure a player's profile. In terms of how to implement social media into the strategy beyond email, yeah, I think Twitter's the best forum for that. There's definitely a large volume of college coaches on there. You certainly want to, I think make sure that your bio section has a lot of helpful information. So your high school, your travel ball team with the uniform numbers for each respective program that you play in, your grad year, your position. If you're a high academic kid, your GPA and your test score can be really helpful. You might want to throw any like metrics or data that are going to be helpful for you in the process. Okay. And then you can throw in a YouTube link right there to your video channel as well. And then I would encourage you to pin like your latest skills video to the top, right? You can pin one tweet. So that way, when a coach gets there, they can get right to seeing something. All right. Some of you guys, have some video, but then you're retweeting stuff or retweeting a friend, and it's hard for a coach to find a video of you. I would have that latest skills video. All right, here's we're coming out of the off season. Pinned is the first tweet, and now a coach can see that very quickly and easily. Obviously, if you're going to use social media, whether as a way to post video or updates, maybe your schedules, certainly potentially using the practice of DMing coaches through that forum. Just be very, smart with the choices that you're making on social media, right? Don't, what your friends are trying to do in terms of a popularity contest on that forum, it probably might not be the best choice for you as a recruit who might have different goals and aspirations moving forward. So just make smart decisions. When we talk about, what we do here at RPP Recruiting, we bring, like I said, a tremendous level of experience. I was a student assistant at Penn State University for 4 years during my undergrad. Got a chance to see the operation of a Division I program day in and day out, help with on-campus recruiting, and then obviously a 16-year career now in this space, helping hundreds of families. From a knowledge perspective, extremely tapped into what the current state of college baseball is, how it impacts recruiting, Very fortunate to have tremendous relationships with college coaches, which allow us to extract a lot of information that we can bring back to help guide players and build out conversations with prospects. Certainly, everything we do is based on evaluation. We're fortunate to have tremendous resources in-house, from strength and power testing to TrackMan data, blast motion. We really have a good sense of where guys stand, how the metrics impact the evaluation, but then also the ability to sit there and watch gameplay and really determine what the best strategy and what that ultimate fit might look like in terms of a ceiling and a floor for each recruit. Certainly a track record of success, as you've probably seen here, throughout the course of the presentation. We featured some of our guys. It was a really exciting year in 2025 and into this early part of 2026. We've had guys commit to, places like Indiana, Duke, Notre Dame, Salve Regina, a top 10 Division III program in the country. And obviously, we're really proud of what our players have accomplished. In terms of our offerings, and so for some of you guys who might be interested in what we do, we can craft a recruiting skills video for you, very much like you saw in the presentation tonight. We also have a consulting service, which is an evaluation plus a strategy build out for you to implement. And then our advisory program, which is really working alongside a player and family throughout the entirety of the recruiting process. All right. So we've got a lot of exciting things that we can, bring to the table for guys who, want to pursue college baseball. I would certainly, tell you to jump on our website as well at RPP, or excuse me, at rocklandpeakperformance.com in our recruiting tab, and check all of that out. All right. In addition, here's some of my contact information. You can email me with any questions. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me. And then you can also use the QR code here to jump directly to our website for those that are interested in checking it out. Again, really appreciate everybody, jumping on. Want to try and I could do this for a few more hours, but really want to try and create, a concise way of looking at, again, the college baseball landscape, some useful strategy for you guys, and hopefully take away some good information to impact your process moving ahead. At this point, definitely would love to open it up, to some Q&A, whether it's something, that we discussed in the presentation tonight, or, maybe a recruiting question in general. Let's just stick to, general topics. Let's not get into my son is X, can you point me in the right direction? If you'd like to have a more specific conversation, I would love to do so. I encourage you to reach out, and we can set that up at a later time. So.
Hey, Sam, I just wanted to say one thing before anyone has any questions. Also, I have two great podcasts that I've done with Sam. If you guys don't know, I have a podcast called Behind the Scenes Podcast. It comes out every Sunday at 10:45 on Twitter, Instagram, and on Apple iTunes, and on Spotify. And I interview a lot of people in the business. And I did want to add that I know a lot. I also know a lot of college coaches, tons of them. I deal with them every day. And sometimes when I can't get a college coach, I call Sam, and Sam can get a hold of them. So it's between the two of us. There's a lot of room there to get the word out. And I would encourage you to listen to the podcast I did with Sam also as well for some extra added stuff. We go a little in deeper for about 30, 40 minutes on each podcast. And with that, Sam, questions ahead.
Awesome.
I have a question.
Great. Go ahead, please.
Really quick on the evaluation aspect of it, just to get into that detail. I know a lot of folks here probably do travel ball showcases and stuff, but when we talk about the actual evaluation, are we talking about a TrackMan setup, or kind of what you displayed earlier, or is it just taking showcase stats over and then use that as a starting point? How would you define that evaluation as a starting point?
Yeah, so I think, obviously, when you do an evaluation through RPP Recruiting, we're going to bring you in. We do a 3-point test. So we do strength testing, we do power testing. We think it's really important to understand, the capabilities in those key areas because they impact the skill set on a very high level. And then obviously take them through a pro style workout where we're able to look at body types, we're able to look at mechanics, movement patterns, certainly within a hitting or a pitching dynamic, right? How they're able to organize their body. We are going to collect data in that setting as well. TrackMan from a pitching hitting perspective. For our hitters, we're going to get blast motion data, and that helps us, look at more information about a player, but it's not just data reliant. For those of you that have been to a showcase or a camp and have data, you can then use that as a way of trying to help maybe guide you a little bit, right? Where, hey, maybe you've been to, a PBR event recently and you have, kind of all of your numbers, and then, go through their system and maybe take a look at guys who have committed to, schools that you're targeting, right? Are you on track for those numbers? That could be, a good way. While it doesn't have all the answers, it could be a good way to start to look at if you're at least in the ballpark for a particular program.
Hey, Mr. Santos, I also wanted to add that when someone from RPP Recruiting comes in and Sam brings them in for that assessment, that involves a 30-minute table set assessment if they so desire. But what they always get is all force plate testing on their power, their acceleration, the ability of their lead leg. We bring them into a Proteus motion machine, which very few places in the country have. Where we assess their upper body power. We take them into the weight room and we do a bench press, a deadlift, and a single leg squat where we use VBT, which is velocity-based training, where we measure bar speed to get an accurate 1 rep max without the kid having to go heavy because he hasn't been properly warmed up. We can get a very, very accurate 1 rep max at 50%. So when you go into, like Sam was saying, a PBR, but even more importantly, when you go to a school and a guy wants to look at your stats and you send them these kind of stats along with his running speed, along with his exit velocity, this sends a different message to a coach that your son has been training in a more serious place. Many of them know us, and all I can say is it doesn't hurt to give them the data that they're actually able to read that they never usually get from a high school kid because the facilities just don't have the ability to do it.
Correct. And that was my earlier point, having that type of evaluation versus
it's groundbreaking.
Got it. So that you're saying that that's much more beneficial potentially for a recruiting from a coach's perspective.
I would think so. I mean, Sam can speak on that, but I know that the college coaches that speak with me, they ask me for data. When I send them the data on a kid and I send them this data, not only do they call me back about the kid, they call me back about the data that was sent. They're actually really impressed. That's like showing up with a better suit on. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Terrific. Thank you. And I do listen to that podcast. I recently heard you guys, Sam was on it. So appreciate the information.
Awesome. Great.
Thanks for listening.
So I had a question. So if your child's going into a showcase and should you be reaching out, let's say there is a school they're interested in, at what point should you be reaching out? Is that prior to or after or after the fact? Like with to the coaches, if you have access to a specific coach and school.
Sure. If you're attending an event and there's a list of, coaches who will also, be there, and you believe that one of those schools is a fit, I would encourage a player to reach out prior, somewhere in the 3 to 5 day range before the event takes place, either, via email or, a DM on Twitter to the coach that will be attending. Introduce yourself with some basic information, high school, grad year, position, travel ball program, maybe what you've been up to in recent weeks, depending particularly on the time of year. And then, I would have a link to video right in that outreach. I think it's really important that that's the centerpiece of any good communication so that they can kind of size you up for the event and make a determination if you're somebody that they want to kind of lock in on, throughout the course of that showcase.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I mean, a quick question here. When you mentioned that August of sophomore year, is that that's the time you can start communicating with the coach? So it's the August of your sophomore year before your junior year starts.
So that's when a coach can start to contact you. You're permitted to send an email at any point in the process. They're just not
Okay.
able to reply.
Okay, thank you.
Just to follow up on that point real quick, I think it's really important that, again, based on the evaluation, you have a sense of, if you're 2028 right now, you should have a clear indicator if you're on track to be recruited this summer, right? If you're a guy who has the potential, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but has the potential to be recruited on August 1st, or let's say August, September of this year, then you need to start to think about potentially, a contact strategy. If your timeline is more into, 2027 during the course of your junior into senior year, there's really, in my belief, no benefit to reaching out to schools this early. That's why the evaluation is so important. There's a question that came in on the chat, so I'll just address it. The question reads, wondering if you are seeing high academic schools using transfer portal as much as other colleges. So within the high academic world, you have kind of different groupings of schools, right? So you have the Ivy League, right, which is obviously elite academic. I also want to make the point that in the Ivy League, there's no athletic aid and there's no merit. So the only financial help you're going to get in the Ivy League is financial aid. But those schools cannot recruit the transfer portal. They simply can't get kids in during the summer, right, when the transfer portal is most active. The admissions windows are very strict. That's very similar at the Division III level with like the NESCAC schools. So that's the New England Small Conference. You then have, your Johns Hopkins and your University of Chicago's, Wash U and St. Louis, those type of D3 programs, which again, single digit acceptance rates, they're not able to play in the portal as much for a similar reason. You really then can subdivide into, the bigger baseball programs that are also academic, Vanderbilt, Duke, Virginia, just to name a few. And yes, they're operating in the transfer portal, right? If you look at those rosters, obviously a super specific scenario, but Virginia's head coach goes to Mississippi State last year. A bunch of guys go with him. Coach Pollard leaves Duke, goes to Virginia. A bunch of the Duke guys go to Virginia. And then Duke had to recruit the portal heavily this summer. So, at the highest level of the sport, even though those schools are extremely academic, Vanderbilt being another one, they're still recruiting the portal and have access to that way of constructing their roster. If you're more comfortable typing out a question in the chat, that's great too. Just want to make sure we spend some time here to address any questions that anyone has this evening.
Going. Last chance. Going. Hey guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Sam.
My pleasure.
So much. Any questions? Sam is always available to you. So you can email him at samsharf@rocklandpeakperformance.com, right?
S-Sharf.
sharf@rocklandpeakperformance.com. Most of you know how to get a hold of me. I also want to remind everyone, for your young guys and the guys that are listening in, A big part of getting recruited is looking physical and playing great during your school year. It's really important that you guys do in-season training. And if you can't get to our place, get somewhere and make sure it's a good place and get there and do in-season training, because all of the work that gets done in the off season goes away within the middle of April. And that's when we start seeing injuries, end of April, beginning of May. So I'm putting that out there. Our in-season training starts in, I believe, 2 weeks. You can sign up for it. You can do it remotely as well. If you're interested, call the front desk or drop us an email at RPP Baseball. And I want to once again thank Sam Sharf one more time. And